Well, hi everybody. Good afternoon to all. A warm welcome. As always, I hope you're safe, happy, and excited to be here with us today. Now, after an amazing journey that started last June, because of COVID, to replace the one and only best branding and marketing conference in Malaysia, the BFM Brandfest, we designed and held 8 sessions, 8 webinars, this one being the 9th, with 3 dialogues, 5 BFM brand shots, half-hour laser focus sessions, jam-packed with marketing goodness that money can't buy. All for you, courtesy of the BFM Brand Fest, with a fantastic team in the background, listening to your feedback, making it better one webinar at a time. With Raghu, our Chief Learning Officer, curating the content and making every session better than the previous one. At AV Plus, we're very proud to be part of this journey and to contribute. And today, the 6th episode is the last one of the BFM Brandfest shots. Yes, all good things do come to an end. And so after 3 dialogues and 5 shots, this will be our last session. My name is Andreas Boyazakis, and I will be your moderator for yet another very insightful session. Today, I will be chatting with one successful and highly motivated leader, a great man who has helped many brands to engage their customers by leveraging powerful insights. And the topic of today is brand building from now until mid-2021, challenges and solutions to consider. Now, this fireside chat is with no other but MC Lai, CEO of Kantar Insights Malaysia, who will share with us the marketing challenges that brand marketers are expected to experience, and more importantly, to discuss imperatives for reactivating demand, which I'm sure it's in the mind of every marketeer these days. Now, this chat can potentially help the brand marketers to better prepare for the future as they anticipate, hopefully, a more optimistic commercial environment. Now, before we proceed, allow me just a few seconds to share a few words about MC, an amazing guy. MC currently heads, as I said before, the Kantar Insights division as its CEO. He's a leader with over 20 years of experience in the business of human understanding, and he brings together a potent, I would say, mix of expertise in the space of innovation, media, brand, and creative to address key business challenges. So without any further ado, MC, welcome to this last BFM Brandfest shot. Wonderful to have you with us today. And let's start with a positive question about growth and opportunity, which is, what do you think are the growth opportunities available to brands in this new normal? And what do you think brand builders must do to take advantage of these?
Well, firstly, thank you, Andreas, and a very good afternoon to everybody. So I know this is hopefully right after lunch or just about after lunch, so we'll keep you entertained and awake. Firstly, I think in terms of the title, it is about brand building, but I think brand building is never a time period and it's never a done job, right? So it's an ongoing thing, although we say it's till mid-2021, but I think brand building is something that we continue to have to do. And to your question, Andreas, what are the things that brand builders, as we call it, need to focus on? Now, we know that, actually, let me just also at the same time share with you.
Yeah, I think you have the
slide that we have.
Couple of slides, right?
Yeah. We know that in something that we have done across globally for Kantar. Let me know if you can see that in full screen.
Yep.
Great. So many of you would have heard of Brand Z. Now, this is a time COVID-19 is truly a very pandemic sort of thing. But if you think back, this is not the first time that we even as of today have experienced things like that. There is SARS, back then in the 2000s. There is also the Fukushima disaster in Japan. There's also MERS in Korea. Throughout all this period, we do see brands suffer. We do see things becoming worse. But the good thing is there's always a recovery, right? And the question here, therefore, is when is the recovery? And what do we need to do in the meantime as we move towards a recovery? So I think in the current period, it's very tempted for any brand to just say, given what's happening, let's make sure we increase sales. Let's make sure we, get back our market share. These are very sort of short-term tactical things. But what's even more important is as we are, moving towards beyond 2020 into 21 and beyond, is the long-term brand strategy as well. There must be a very good balance between short-term and long-term in order for a brand to really thrive, and be ahead of all the brands. So let me just sort of take you through this slide that you're seeing right here. So based on our Brand Z study that we have done every year, the ones in the light blue on top of it are what we call the top 10 most powerful brands in the world, right? This is not just Malaysia, but globally. And you would see that in any of these situations where there is a downturn, there is a decline. Of course, they are part of the decline as well. But when the recovery time comes, they are the one that is really able to sort of pull right ahead and run very fast compared to the rest of the brand. And the second tier brands are not bad either. They still consist of those key brands that are basically your top 100 portfolio brands. And these are brands that any of us would love to be working with and working for. Even the third group in the sort of lighter blue, these are your S&P 500 group of brands. Again, not bad brands, but the more you are ahead and the more you differentiate and be more powerful, as we call it in our words, the more likely you are able to recover much faster than the rest. And just to share with you what are the top 5 sort of Brand Z brands this year.
I think took that out of my mouth. That's right. You took that out of my mouth. That's right. Which one? Which ones?
A prize for any sort of people who guess it right. Amazon is the #1 most powerful brand in terms of what we have measured, followed by Apple, followed by Microsoft, followed by Google. And the last one, you'll be quite surprised, is actually a finance or payment sort of brand, Visa. So the top 4 are all sort of technology-based kind of companies or brands, with Visa coming in #5. So that pretty much sort of signify in terms of the kind of industry, the kind of sectors that the brands are growing. But because they are technology and this is the time for them to try, but that doesn't mean that if we are an FMCG brand, if we are even in the services industry, hospitality industry, they were not able to grow. We can still grow, right? So the point here is we must know what are the elements for us to focus on between short-term and long-term. What is our brand equity? What is the strength of our brand for us to then continue to build and gain the trust of consumers in order for us to then be able to build that brand. So I would say that during this time, in fact, we have worked with several clients that have started this whole brand building initiative, and we do see that they are already seeing sort of good returns in terms of consumer sentiment, in terms of when things are ready to roll, they will be the first brands that people will think of. So I think this is the time where we need to start the groundwork, and not when we think that the vaccine is found or when the recovery is already here.
And that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because like you said, we have seen that happening time and time again. And the brands who do invest into building their equity, the brand persona better, they come out as winners. So, of course, one of the questions that is in everybody's mind, and I know in all the shots that we had so far for the BFM Brandfest, COVID is a big part of it. So do you expect the current situation to persist, or do you anticipate that more surprises are in store for the brand builders? Because I'm sure that's in everybody's mind. What do you think?
Of course. I mean, if I have $1 for that question, I'll be a millionaire by now.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, I don't think it will, like I said, ever end like within a day or two. So, while the situation is truly uncertain, even in Malaysia as of yesterday, I think the number of cases was it 80s or something? Yeah. Nobody knows, when the next wave would hit and therefore what will happen. But the thing is, again, brands need to be prepared, and brand needs to continue to make sure that whatever that we do is going to put consumer at the heart of the process or the development, right? Being consumer centric, as we call it. And there are brands that have started to look at what we call the new normal, and therefore understand what is the need of consumer in the new normal, and subsequently develop products and services that is catered to the new normal. So brands like these have already sort of, live with the fact that, okay, well, in this is not going to change in the short term. Let's run and look at what consumer tension, consumer needs are. And one great example that we're just reading is one of the Korean cosmetic brand. I'm sure all the ladies out there, some of them do miss sort of, putting up, making up, and sort of dressing up to work. And there is that need that is missing. And this brand in Korea, what they did is, people at home, yes, you don't have to necessarily make up and all that, but you still, want to look good, feel good. So they came out with this almost like a transparent kind of lip gloss lipsticks where people can use, and then, various different kind of makeup that you can still do at home, that it doesn't look too over. So it gives people that ability to still connect and do the things that they like, but catered to this kind of crisis. So I think that is the kind of innovation that brands need to think about as they move forward.
And I know it sounds, easy to say. I know that. I know we said so many times, we need to learn how to pivot. We need to change our game. We need to accept the new reality. The fact of the matter is that you're right, and it is what it is. I guess what they say is true. When life gives you lemons, you make the best lemonade there is, right? And you sell it at the right price with the right branding, and you're going to succeed. And I think that, yes, you're right. We can't really predict what can happen next, but perhaps we can say that the only thing we can predict is the unpredictable, and things are going to be fluid all the time. And therefore, what I personally like about, if I can say that, and it's not controversial, about what COVID did on a positive note, is to really push us to advance much faster. In fact, I was reading the other day that the technological advancement that has happened in the last 6 months because of COVID would be the equivalent of what would happen in 5 to 6 years if this push would not have been there. So I guess we need to learn how to pivot, and we need to learn how to adjust and be always ready for the new normal, if I can say that. But let me go, before we go on, let me go back to your original point, because I really like that. You said that this is a time to keep on brand building, and this is a time to really focus on building that brand equity that, once the crisis is over, is going to really make it to an exponential growth. So are there any specific indicators that you can tip us with that can help us to reframe the value of our brands?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite sure, as per what you said earlier, because of COVID, the advancement or the adoption of technology has, just sort of changed literally overnight, over a week, right? And so for those brands who are able to sort of leverage that kind of technology, things like even AI and so on, this is the time where, again, you will be able to really, gain a lot more in terms of the insights, and use those to your advantage, and be able to differentiate a lot better than your competitor. What we have seen is, there's many brands that have successfully transformed, and these are not big brands, even the smaller brands, like your neighborhood stores, even your moms and pops. A lot of them have started to adopt technology because they realize that this is the only way to grow. And their brand, of course, being smaller, but it's still a brand that started to then offer new services, started to connect better with their customers and so on. So I think any brands that leverage technology, leverage AI in a way to get human understanding, to get insights, will definitely be far ahead than the others. But having insights is just one, right? How do you then activate? What are the engagement, and how do you translate that into whether it's creative, whether it's various different touch points? I think that is even more important and critical. And I think part of what we have done is, as part of Kantar, we have done both a consumer barometers because of COVID, and we have also done a business compass study where we interviewed all the businesses across the globe, including Malaysia, where we speak to all the C-levels and so on. So in Malaysia specifically, it's important for us to kind of understand what are the key concerns when it comes to businesses. And you will see here the top 6 concerns. Of course, being from a business perspective, recession is the #1 thing that everybody in business is going to worry about, followed by financial issues. And quite interestingly, talent comes out to be the top 3. Within recession, what we see is, right now, it is about consumer confidence that is driving them to feel that recession, because without, the strong consumer confidence, no one is going to spend. So no matter, what you put on and so on, the demand is not there, then that's going to create a lot of issues and trouble, right? And of course, globally, as we saw between, the US of the world, China of the world, and so on and so forth, that is another big element of uncertainty. So, of course, not to sort of put down reduced demand, that is the #1 thing that everybody thought about. So these are the 3 key factors within the recession sort of thinking from the business perspective. Financially, of course, it is all about, understanding the financial hardship by all the consumers out there. And in fact, when we did our consumer barometers, financial concern is the #1 for consumers in Malaysia, right? From business, it's a different perspective, but for consumer, financial is the #1. And like I said, quite interestingly, with talent, and we try to understand what we mean by talent here is really, a lot of people would have gone through some kind of furloughing, some kind of, pay cuts, even layoff and so on. So the whole sentiment from an employee perspective right now is actually quite low. So, and that is, when we talk about happy staff, happy customers. So right now, as a brand, again, how do we, look beyond just pricing, beyond just product and all that, to also, focus on our people? Because I think people drive the brand as well, right? So that's another important area for us to think about. How do we, at this point in time, still show the kind of care, concern, and build the kind of people or talent that we have within our organization? Because that is part of how we brand build as well.
I love this this slide, MC, and I love it because it includes this element of talent. And I know that for the brand marketeers, the SMEs out there, I know that when a crisis like this hits, of course, the first thing that comes to your mind is, how long is the recession going to last? What am I going to do? How am I going to cope financially? However, in every conversation that I've been engaged with, in fact, I was in an earlier discussion with HSBC and MDEC in RISE, with just about 200 marketeers. It was coming back to people. And then when you really strip this onion of concerns, people end up being at the pinnacle, at the top of what really can drive the new norm, what can drive brands, what can drive consumers, and that connection. Because we could buy the best tech, and my next question is going to be about AI, but unless we really have our people focused to the same direction, defining a very strong purpose, then we're going to lose the game. And that's where the connection is. So I love this one because it talks about talent. And that was, in fact, that was my whole concept about launching AMV Plus during the crisis, because it's focusing on coaching and people. And let me take it to this tech platform before we go to our last 2 questions. And you talked about leveraging tech, and you mentioned briefly in passing AI, but I caught that, so I'm going to put you back to that. And my question is then, do you foresee brands using the power of AI to fuel growth and engage consumers in more interesting ways moving forward, now that tech did all that it did? And if so, how?
Again, golden question. So I think to break it down a little bit, there's various different aspects that technology or AI come into play. So with Kantar, what we've started to do a lot is, to look beyond just the primary data to really think about all the other sources of data that's available. So social analytics is definitely one of the big area in terms of, robotics or AI, in terms of, really going in and pulling out nuggets and insights without having to do any research, because these are real conversations. These are real consumer sentiment that is happening out there. So the challenge with that is we need to be able to then scope it well. We are able to then, anchor around very specific business questions. I mean, those of you who have gone into social media listening would know that if you don't scope it well, it's really garbage in, garbage out, right? You get like 100,000 of people talking about milk, but you learn nothing about milk, right? Versus if you scope it very sharply from a business perspective, then you'll be able to learn a lot more insights without going into, doing another big piece of research, for example, or complementing those tracking studies that you might have and so on. So that's one way of, I think, how AI and technology would help. I think the other one is really to look at the client's own data. So, every company, every organization would have lots of data, whether it's your marketing spend, whether it's your sales, whether it's your distribution and so on. So if we take those and again, infusing it with whatever that we have done from a research perspective and do a bit of market modeling kind of thing, you will be able to again get very interesting insights that you might not have thought of. And again, this will not be something that back then a lot of people would have thought of, but in today's time, it's fantastic because again, it reflects the pace and it reflects the work to be done through technology. So these are the two areas that I think we have started to do a lot more across Kantar to really make sure that whatever that we bring back to the client, it's not just based on consumer data, one-dimensional. It's actually a more holistic understanding of the whole situation.
I love that. And I think that I have a very soft spot on what you said about insights, actually, because data leads to that. And also then you can have clarity and be clear with what you want. Because if you're not clear as a marketeer with what you want, then you might end up wasting time and go in circles. Now, as we are approaching and we don't have a whole lot of time, I just want your snapshot answer to what do you think are the rules that brands in Malaysia would leverage in order to win or even have an opportunity to grow over the next 12 months? Any bite-sized advice?
Well, again, I hope these 4 points here would kind of answer the question in a very sort of concise manner. So one is really, as a brand, we really need to decide, what messages do we want to amplify for the brand. So this is a time, like we said, it's about brand building opportunities. It's not about promotion. It's not about, freebies. So what aspects of your brand that is able to engage and be relevant to consumer in today's new normal? You need to understand that. If you don't, please, make sure that you find ways to understand that, because that is what you want to amplify. And the second point there being what I think I said earlier is have a very balanced short and long term towards brand building versus performance-driven marketing, because you don't want to be skewed towards just a very short-term view because this situation is not just short-term, right? It might go into a, 6 months, 12 months, but it also from a brand building perspective, you do want to focus more on long-term brand building as well. And I think the third point is don't underestimate the power of creativity. So during this 6 months or so, at the very beginning, a lot of clients will say, I want to stop spending, I don't want to advertise, I want to see how things are. But those brands who took it and go with it, you would see that they are now getting a lot more in return, right? A lot better ROI, because they know that what to say and how to say it in a time like this is able to connect with the consumer much better. And of course, the last point there is really all about touch point. You can be spending $1 million, but if you spend $1 million in the wrong touch point or not at the touch point that gives you the best ROI, then again, we are not, leveraging or optimizing our spend. So I think these are the 4 points that I would probably leave everybody with, and as we plan and move forward.
I hope everybody got a screenshot, but that's okay. We'll send it to you. Don't worry. Which then, I love this, by the way, and I'll wrap it up in the end because I think it's so critical and so important. But link it to that. I have my second to last question as the time goes by. Throughout the BFM Brandfest short series, many experts that we talked to, they shared how the tone and manner of advertising needs to change for brands to sound more genuine about the hardships of the pandemic that has brought upon the people. Now, do you foresee that empathy messaging will be critical throughout 2021? I think empathy is a very critical factor here, but how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question because, we do quite a bit in terms of creative testing, and we therefore know what sort of messages, tonality, and so on works. And especially during this crisis, I think there's a couple of elements that really stood out across various different creatives that we have seen around the world. Number one is really be authentic. This is a time where, as a brand, the tone and manner needs to be authentic. It's not, sort of putting on a face of over caring or pretending, almost the other extreme, that COVID doesn't exist and life goes on. So I think be authentic and be true to the brand value and the brand equity is terribly important. The second is in terms of the tonality. What we found was actually humor at this point in time really, engage with consumer and connect with them very well. Because like it or not, Malaysia may be in a better place in terms of how we manage the COVID situation. But if you think about Europe, think about US, a lot of the sentiment is still very negative at the moment because of the numbers and so on. So humor tends to, again, put a smile to consumer face during this kind of crisis and so on. So I think, think about doing that. And the third thing, what we found was during this period as well, because of lockdown, because of limitation, a lot of brands couldn't go out and shoot an ad. So what do? So again, with the right sort of tools and analysis that we have done, we're able to then, take various different creatives that the client have done and say, this is the part and this is the part from the other ad and so on. And you sort of weave it together, we can still sort of create a story that is sort of, still be authentic to the brand and hopefully would have some humor elements to it as well. So I think about how do I, almost repurpose, past creatives that we have in a way that is still, relevant and communicating the right message.
I love that, MC. I just simply do. I think that is sound advice. And if you said $1 million question, I think I asked a few. You gave us quite a few $1 million answers, which is fantastic. And here's my last question before we wrap it up and we close it, just to stick to the timing. We have 3 months to go or so to close 2020, a year that many wanted to pass by and some want to erase from memory.
Yeah.
Even though for me, it was a great learning, a year that we should remember in order to become a beacon of how we need to behave and adapt to change. But with 3 more months to go, what behavioral changes are you seeing in purchasing? And what should brands be noticing and take note of?
Great. Again, just to leave everybody with some of our thoughts, without having said anything on e-commerce, everybody knows that is going to be that change and the area we want to focus. But the important thing here is, again, to make sure that there is a balanced strategy to it and not just make our product available and that's it, right? So a lot of the brand building that we talked about in the early part of the discussion now needs to apply in the e-commerce world. So it's not easy though, right? It's not something that you can just take from a retail environment and just slap it onto an e-commerce and it works. So I think understanding the shopper, understanding the e-commerce sort of platform is critically important. I think the second point here is recognize the fact that now content is the king, and the fact that everybody can create content. So again, to my point of, if you need to create advertising, think about using your own consumers. Think about using, people that's out there that's already saying things that is about the product or the category, because these are people that already have great content, and people often would have, thousands or hundreds of thousands of likes for that kind of content as well. The third thing there is in terms of what we call turning up the volume. So there's a lot more newer audio channels that is now coming to mainstream. I mean, a great example is BFM, right? So more and more so, given COVID and all that, this is the #1 business radio station that everybody dialed into now. So again, things like that, it's something that we need to keep a track on. And lastly, in the past, we know that influencers sort of was something that was very popular pre-COVID. But when COVID hit, everybody sort of wonder what happened. So I think with influencer, the important thing we need to recognize now is it's not about being famous. It's not about celebrity. It's really more about expertise, right? So if you have the right KOL content and be measured, based on the expertise and with things that people can relate to, that's going to be much more important. So which is what we call time to grow up. It's not just because, I'm famous, I'm pretty, I'm good looking, and therefore I sell. So I think these are the 4 things that it's slightly different from, the usual things that people talk about, but I think those are quite interesting for brands to think about as well.
Unbelievable. I love that, MC. If you can stop sharing while I will wrap it up, that would be great.
Yeah.
That was truly inspiring. I don't have words to thank you. Thank you, MC, for your time and for your sharing. It was a real pleasure to have you with us today. And of course, thanks to all of you who turned in. As usual, I was taking notes diligently. And let me see if I can try to put everything in a 1-minute summary, because MC has said so many things that I think are invaluable, but you can play back the podcast from the BFM Brandfest site and you can take it in one by one. He said that in time of crisis, you have to build your brand. And that is the most important thing that you do, because the brands that do that end up succeeding when the crisis is over. Talked about leveraging tech and data to get the right insights, because knowing what your consumers want, having the right insight is going to lead you to the right strategy and to know exactly what is that you need to do. And of course, it is about people and how you're going to leverage their power, how you're going to train them, retrain them, and make sure that they're ready to really attack the future. He gave us a few tips if we really want to win the battle and become better, stronger as a brand after COVID. MC said to decide what our message is and to push that, to amplify that. It will be very, very, very critical. He talked about balancing the long term versus the short term, which I think is very important. He talked about creativity and he said, you need to be creative. You need to decide what to say and how to say it, because that creates empathy and the connection with the consumer. He talked about creating synergy between the different touch points and create that multiplier effect that really will help you build the brand. We talked about empathy, which works for the people, but in fact, it doesn't only work for the people, it works for brands. He talked about being authentic and having humor, and I like that part about humor, because in this time of crisis, sometimes when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, and we need to have fun while we are brand building. He talked about storytelling and about repositioning stories that you have, and I think that is fundamentally true, because he finished it up by what to note for the last 3 months. And when we link it back to storytelling, I think the most important thing that he said is that content is king, and content can tell that story and create that emotional connection, create empathy with the consumers, and therefore understanding your shopper, understanding your consumer, and e-commerce as a platform will be critical. And finally, to really turn up the volume and win the war, because COVID is just an excuse to make us stronger. Then that's how we need to look at it. So, my friends, to those who have missed the last 3 dialogues and the first 5 short series, this being the 6th, you can log on to bradfest.com.my and you can watch them, you can download them, you can save them. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for attending this last BFM Brandfest short webinar. The series have been curated, planned, crafted, and delivered very thoughtfully. And we are sure that you have benefited from the ideas and the insights that were delivered by all of the expert speakers so far. For me, AMV Plus is proud to have partnered up with BFM Brandfest to bring these sessions to you, packed with insights and knowledge. And once again, thank you for participating. My name is Andreas Voyazakis, and for more of what I do for a living, please visit amvplus.com, follow me on LinkedIn. It's free, and if you're lucky, occasionally it's rewarding. Until the next time we meet then, in the next webinar, in the next chat room, hopefully face-to-face soon. Please stay safe, stay happy, and stay well. From all of us at the BFM Brandfest team, take care and bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.